This massage is the posterior back massage. We're going to do the lower back, then we'll work on scapular lift, and then we're going to finish off on some set movements on the upper trapezius. So to start the massage, what we're going to do is an effleurage on the whole back. Notice I've got my fingers pointing together. A holistic way of doing it is with your fingers forward. We're going to turn it so it's side on and your fingers are pointing together. You can always tell with this one if the couch is the right height. If it's not the right height, you'll struggle to get your inside hand, or the hand furthest away from you, pointing in the right direction. If you can't, you may have to readjust the height of your table. The idea of having your fingers pointed together, yeah, it is more pressure on your wrist, but you can cover much more of the back. Lydia has got quite a small back and fuzz-free. What you will see if you've got like a rugby player prop forward, it'll be a much wider back, much higher back, and you might want to cover a great deal of area at the same time. If you have got slightly smaller hands and you do struggle with a bigger sports person to warm it, you can use your forearm. With your forearm, you make sure your hand's in a pronated position, so you're using the fleshy part of your forearm. You're not in that position, and you're using the bony part on your ribs, especially there, can cause quite a bit of damage. So it's that part of your forearm. But we're going to effleurage the back. I tend to think it's good practice then when you move on to the petrissage to stay on the side closest to you. There is a tendency to lean over, but I just do think leaning over your client at any stage is quite bad practice. What we're going to do is stay on the closer side and petrissage right up and down the back. Gives you a chance to get a feel for your client. We're going right up the lumbar spine on the erector spinae, making sure we get the latissimus dorsi, right over the rhomboids, upper trapezius, over the scapula, and we work to picking up right up and down the whole back. You could, if you wish, as we did in the previous massage, do some rolling, or ringing, sorry, right over the lumbar spine, but I would just keep the ringing to the lumbar spine area. Once the muscles have been really picked up, loosened up, we can move on to the frictions. With the frictions, we're going to start on the lumbar spine, on the side closest to you. I've got a good grip of both sides though, so there's no chance of me slipping off into the vertebrae. I'm going to work up the erector spinae until we meet the lower trapezius. Lower trapezius, you should be able to feel with some little bit of palpation, feel the lower trapezius just come in. So we're working the full length of the lumbar spine. If you wanted to concentrate a little bit more on the lower back, once that's released off, you might want to do some stripping movements with the heel of your hand, but do ensure all the time that there's no pressure being put onto the vertebrae. You're just working on the soft tissue. I always find it's better to use the heel of your hand. If you did slip off into the vertebrae, it's not going to be as detrimental as an elbow or knuckles. So if you just use the heel of your hand, you can work on the lumbar spine there. After the back is suitably warm enough, we're going to move up again, and we're going to use a tracing technique around the scapula to warm up pre-scapular lift. With a tracing technique, we keep an inside hand on. So my inside hand is just going from circling around the scapula. My outside hand is then going to come over and trace over what my inside hand was doing. Notice my hand's going over the top. It doesn't go underneath, over the top. Okay, so inside hand doesn't lose contact at all, outside hand just jumps over the top. Fluid movement as well. If you employ this as a post-sports massage, you're moving fluid there. For people like swimmers, field events like shot put, javelin, speed bowlers in cricket, you're moving all the fluid there down towards the lymphatic node and your auxiliary node. So you could employ that as a post-sports massage as well. Once that's warm enough, what I usually move on to then is a really light friction, really light, so it's almost like a palpation just around the contour of the scapula. So you're feeling for which muscles are going to be tight during the scapular lift. The video feels reasonably relaxed right around the scapula, so you can expect there to be quite a lot of movement and quite a lot of access in the scapular lift. Once you're happy with that, we can move on to the scapular lift. Two ways of doing it. The textbook way of doing it is with the hand in the small of the back. For some clients this can be quite uncomfortable, so I'll show you an alternative. Afterwards, you've got one hand just underneath. You can go to the side like that if you wanted to, just underneath, so you can get some slight protraction or slight movement of the scapula there. Then what we're going to do with our hand in that position is pop at the bottom of the scapula, and then we're going to push in and up slightly. So our hand would just go right underneath the scapula there. The idea of this is you don't lose pressure. If you lose pressure any time, we have to start again. We take our hand up, hooking the thumb underneath the scapula, move around, right underneath, and then we get to the top. Keep the pressure on the way back down. So we're really accessing muscles like subscapularis that don't get a lot of stretching or frictions from massage, right underneath the scapula. Okay, I would usually have the body in that position, just so you can see what I'm doing, we're hooking right underneath. If you do find a tight spot, friction it, you can do some slight movement of the scapula, but Lydia's got a lot of access underneath the scapula there. It shouldn't feel uncomfortable to the client at all. The other alternative is to move the hand down beside the body. The muscles, like infraspinatus then, is in much more of a relaxed state. It's obvious, not so much of an obvious protraction or obvious movement of the scapula. But what we can do, if you keep your hand fixed, and you push up with your outside hand, you can see that you can still get just as much access, and the muscles in a much more relaxed state. Okay. You could also turn the client on the side facing you, put your hand underneath, and do a scapular lift there just to release it off. After you've done all of that, put the arm back in a comfortable position, whichever the client is comfortable with, and then go through with the tracing movement again. You've done some quite deep friction work there. Other areas you can access from this position, if you wanted to do a specific massage on the tricep or the posterior deltoid, you can also access that in a pronated position. After this, we then move on to the 5 set movements on the upper trapezius.